Hello everyone, I'm Raven. Now I'm going to continue the discussion about motivation. Now that we understand the meaning of motivation, we are going to discuss what is the connection between motivation and needs. In 1943, Abraham Harold Maslow, an American psychologist, proposed a hierarchy of needs that spans the spectrum of motives ranging from biological to the individual to the social. Maslow's theory defines motivation as the process of satisfying certain needs that are required for long-term development. According to Maslow, a need is a relatively lasting condition or feeling that requires relief or satisfaction, and it tends to influence action over the long term. Basically, sinasabi lang ni Maslow dito na tayong mga tao ay merong mga pangangailangan na kailangan nating ma-satisfy para tayo ay makasurvive and ma-develop yung ating pagkatao dito sa mundo. Kaya naman, dahil sa mga needs na ito, tayong mga tao ay nagkakaroon ng motivation para ma-satisfy and ma-fulfill yung sinasabing mga basic needs ni Maslow. Ipinaliwanag din dito na yung mga basic needs natin or yung certain needs natin ay maaaring makaapekto doon sa action na ginagawa natin over the long term. Ngayon, alamin naman natin kung ano yung mga needs na ibinigay ni Maslow. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is based on a simple premise. Human beings have needs that are hierarchically ranked. There are some needs that are basic to all human beings, and in their absence, nothing else matters. We are ruled by these needs until they are satisfied. After we satisfy our basic needs, they no longer serve us as motivators and we can begin to satisfy higher order of needs. Maslow organized human needs into a pyramid that includes physiological, safety, love and belonging, esteem, and self-actualization needs. Itong mga needs na ito ay binigay sa atin ni Maslow at inilagay niya sa isang pyramid from lowest level to the highest level. Let us first discuss the physiological needs, the most basic needs of Maslow's needs, such as the need for air, food, and water. For example, when you are hungry, all your behavior may be motivated by the need to find food. Once you eat, the search for food ceases and the need for food no longer motivates you. And gamit yung theory ni Maslow na ito, maaari nating maipaliwanag kung bakit meron pa ring mga taong labas ng labas despite having the pandemic. Because gutom sila. Hindi natin po pwedeng sabihin na manatili sila sa bahay kung nakakaramdam sila ng kumakalam na sikmura. Their hunger motivates them to find food. Hindi na muna nila maiisip yung kanilang kaligtasan, subalit kailangan nilang i-fulfill muna yung sinasabi ni Maslow na first level, which is the physiological needs such as the need for food. The next level is the safety needs. At this stage, they will be motivated or we will be motivated to direct our behavior toward obtaining shelter and protection in order to satisfy this need. Kung babalik tayo doon sa example natin kanina, kung yung mga tao ay may sapat na pangangailangang pagkain o tubig, maaari na sila ngayong manatili sa kanilang tahanan kasi hindi na nila iisipin yung kanilang physiological needs dahil madadirect na yung kanilang behavior sa pag-obtain ng kanilang safety. The third level is love and belonging needs. Once safety needs have been met, social needs for love and belonging become important. This can include the need to bond with other human beings, the need to be loved, and the need to form lasting attachment. We are not created by God na nag-iisa. And even Adam ay binigyan ni God ng kasama, si Eve. Tayo din inilagay ni God sa mga pamilya natin because kailangan talaga natin ng makakaagapay dito sa mundo. Dahil kung feeling mo nag-iisa ka, parang mawawalan ka rin ng motivation na kumilos dahil iisipin mo para saan pa yung mga ginagawa mo kung hindi mo naman mapapakinabangan na maitulong sa iba o sa pamilya mo. No man is an island. That's why we are motivated to find friends and romantic partners. Next one is self-esteem needs. Esteem needs refer to the desire to be respected by one's peers, to feel important and to be appreciated. People will often look for ways to achieve a sense of mastery, and they may seek validation and praise from others in order to fulfill these needs. That's why, when we feel like we are being neglected or we are being judged and critiqued by someone, bumababa yung self-esteem needs natin. And tingin na natin sa sarili natin, wala tayong tamang ginawa kasi puro mali lang yung nakikita ng iba. Kaya mahalaga yung magbigay ka ng appreciation sa kapwa mo para maitaas din yung self-esteem needs niya. The highest and the last level of the hierarchy of needs is the self-actualization. Self-actualization is a need that essentially equates to achieving one's full potential, acquiring new skills, taking on new challenges, and behaving in a way that will help you to achieve your life goals. According to Maslow and other humanistic theorists, self-actualization reflects the humanistic emphasis on positive aspect of human nature. Maslow suggested that this is an ongoing lifelong process and that only a small percentage of people actually achieve a self-actualized state. Next, we are going to discuss the drive reduction theory of motivation by Clark L. Hall, which is an American psychologist. Drive reduction theory first proposed by Clark Hall, the father of drive reduction theory. In 1943, he proposed that the purpose of biological drives is to correct disturbances of homeostasis. Homeostasis is the ability of a system or living organism to adjust its internal environment to maintain a stable equilibrium, such as the ability to warm-blooded animals to maintain a constant temperature. Basically, yung meaning ng homeostasis ay yung pagiging calm ng mind natin o yung having the state of balance in our mind. According to Hall, physiological needs result in psychological drive states that direct behavior to meet the needs and ultimately bring the system back to homeostasis. Dito sa theory ni Mr. Clark, sinasabi dito na yung physiological needs natin ay nagiging resulta because of our psychological drive state. For example, matagal ka nang hindi kumakain and your blood sugar levels will drop below normal. Low blood sugar induces a physiological need and a corresponding drive state. Example, hunger, that will direct you to seek out and consume food. Eating will eliminate the hunger and ultimately your blood sugar levels will return to normal. Drives and homeostasis. An early theory of motivation proposed that the maintenance of homeostasis is particularly important in directing behavior. Homeostasis is the tendency to maintain a balance or optimal level within a biological system. In a body system, a control center receives input from the receptors. The control center directs effectors to correct any imbalance in the body detected by the control center. Basically, yung meaning nito ay yung purpose ng biological drives natin is to correct yung disturbances sa homeostasis natin. For example, we are dehydrated. And yung pagiging dehydrated natin, nadedetect siya ng neurons natin that are concentrated in the hypothalamus in the brain. So, yung appropriate biological responses natin are being activated automatically. While our body is automatically respond to these survival drives, we are motivated to correct these disturbances by drinking water or actively seeking or generating warmth by moving. In essence, we are motivated to engage in whatever behavior is necessary to fulfill our unsatisfied drives. One way that the body elicits this behavior motivation is by increasing physiological arousal. According to Graham and Weiner, 1996, drive reduction theory also emphasizes the role that habits play in the type of behavioral response in which we engage. A habit is a pattern of behavior in which we regularly engage. Once we have engaged in a behavior that successfully reduces a drive, we are more likely to engage in that behavior whenever faced that drive in the future. We have primary and secondary drives. Primary drives, yung mga example na to ay yung thirst, hunger, and desire for sex. While yung secondary drives naman, yung mga example na to is the desire for wealth. Bakit siya naging secondary drives? Kasi yung desire mo for wealth, hindi naman siya necessary for survival. Ang necessary lang naman is money. There are critics of drive reduction theory. So, merong mga nag-criticize or hindi naniwala doon sa drive reduction theory. Kasi, for example, nagugutom tayo. Kung nakakain na tayo, dapat satisfied na tayo. Pero kung minsan, nakakaramdam pa rin tayo na gusto pa rin natin kumain kahit nakakakain lang natin. So, there are also complications to drive reduction theory caused by so-called pleasure-seeking behaviors, which seem to be contradictory to the theory's precepts. Why would an individual actively seek out more stimulation if it is already in a state of relaxation and fulfillment? Proponents of drive reduction theory would argue that one is never in a state of complete fulfillment, and thus, there are always drives that need to be satisfied. Now, let us discuss the arousal theory of motivation by Robert Mearns Yerkes and John Dillingham Dodson. Arousal theory expands upon drive reduction theory by considering levels of arousal as a potential motivators. Arousal theory proposes that motivation is strongly linked to biological factors that control reward sensitivity and goal-driven behavior. The purpose of biological drives is to correct disturbances of homeostasis. According to drive reduction theory, the body is motivated to engage in whatever behavior is necessary to fulfill an unsatisfied drive. One way that the body elicits this behavioral motivation is by increasing physiological arousal. So, kung nagpo-focus yung drive reduction theory doon sa biological needs as a motivators, this arousal theory examines the influence of the neural transmitters dopamine as a motivator in the body. The reward system. Arousal theory proposes that motivation is strongly linked to biological factors that control reward sensitivity and goal-driven behavior. Reward sensitivity is located in the mesolimbic dopamine system. Research shows that individual differences in neurological activity in this area can influence motivation for certain goal-driven behaviors that will elicit a reward or satisfy a craving. In this way, the reward system spurs physiological arousal, which motivates the individual to engage in whatever behavior is necessary to satisfy or relieve that arousal. For example is the substance use, which is associated with the overactivity in the dopamine system. Depending on how strongly an individual's brain interprets that as a reward, they may be more or less motivated to continue using that substance. So kung na-overuse ng substance na yon, yung dopamine system, maaaring makaapekto yon ng makapagbigay yon ng mas maraming motivation dun sa tao or maaaring kabaligtad or less motivation. Dopamine pathways in the brain play an important role in the regulation of reward, which is in turn motivates behavior. Some of the most important parts of the brain's reward center include the nucleus accumbens, the VTA, and the frontal cortex. Sa isang pag-aaral na ginawa ni na Peter Milner and James Olds noong 1950s, ay inilagay nila yung isang rat na merong electrode implanted sa brain na to sa isang box. Tapos, meron doong dalawang lever. Yung isa naglalabas ng food and yung isa naman ay nagbibigay ng brief stimulus to reward the center of the brain. Tapos, yung daga ay parang accident niyang natapakan yung nagbibigay ng brief stimulus. Ngayon, nakalimutan niya na ngayon yung kanyang hunger because of that stimulus na nag-reward doon sa reward system niya. This behavior is called electrical self-stimulation. Sometimes, rat would become so involved in pressing the lever that they would forget about food and water, stopping only after collapsing from exhaustion. This study provided evidence that animals are motivated to perform behaviors that stimulate dopamine release in the reward center of the brain. Next, I will discuss the optimal levels of arousal. Berlin, 1960. Theories of learning asserts that there is an optimal level of arousal that we all try to maintain. If we are under-aroused, we become bored and will seek out some sort of stimulation. On the other hand, if we are over-aroused, we will engage in behaviors to reduce our arousal. The concept of optimal arousal in relation to performance on a task is depicted here. Performance is maximized at the optimal level of arousal. It tapers off during under and over arousal. For easy tasks, a higher level of arousal generally increases performance. For harder tasks, a lower level of arousal is better. For example, most students have experienced this need to maintain optimal levels of arousal over the course of their academic career. Isipin natin kung gaano ka-stress yung na-experience ng mga student toward the end of semester. They feel overwhelmed with work and yearn for rest and relaxation of summer break. So kapag sobrang daming work or task na mga dapat gawin ng estudyante, nagkakaroon sila ng stress and yung stress na yun ay nagbibigay sa kanila ng high anxiety na hindi na nila nagagawa o hindi na nila alam paano gagawin yung kanilang mga task. Their level of arousal is too high. But once they finish the semester, bumabalik na uli doon sa may optimal yung kanilang level of arousal. Lastly, we will discuss the connection between temperament and motivation. Temperament is defined as an individual's basic way of interacting and includes aspects like frustration tolerance, the ability to withstand frustrating situation without getting upset, delay of gratification, and inhibition versus impulsivity. All of these factors affect the individual's level of motivation to engage in certain behaviors. Fulfilling the impulse brings about a physiological reward similar to the rat pressing the button. Some individuals are more sensation-seeking in that they have higher motivation to engage in arousing or physiologically stimulating activities. These individuals are more likely to engage in risky behaviors like driving fast, riding roller coasters, and other activities that get their adrenaline pumping. Likewise, someone who is very impulsive and uninhibited might be very motivated to go buy a car on a moment's notice, as compared with someone who is very inhibited and has difficulty taking action. That's the end of my report. I hope you get something from my report and use it in our study in psychology.